On this Thursday night, Toronto City Council passes its budget and its property tax increase.
We have taken an approach that shows that we're a caring city and that we are not going to sort of just take cuts with a pencil and just go through lines.
We'll tell you what the budget means for you and your wallet. Plus,
every single parent out should be here today because their kids are going to be affected by this as much as our kid is.
parents and therapists speaking out against the changes to autism programs at Queen's Park. And it is called the Cramper, but it's no Holiday Inn. It's providing shelter for one Toronto homeless man. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. They went late into the evening, but Toronto City Councilors finally passed their 2019 budget, which will include a property tax hike due in part to the cooling real estate market. Natalie Nanowski has the details.
I think people generally understand that our situation is not flush. It was a difficult year because of the land transfer tax.
A slowing housing market meant Toronto didn't get the $80 million in land transfer tax revenue it expected.
This is not the year in which they're going to expect that we are going to be launching a lot of new initiatives or bringing substantial increases to those that are even in priority areas.
No significant services were cut either. But to make up that missing chunk of change, the city voted to increase property tax at the rate of inflation. That's a 2.5% hike. And when combined with other fees, the grand total is nearly 3.6%, meaning on the average property tax bill, homeowners will pay about $100 more a year. But some councillors say the increase isn't enough. There's a multi-billion-dollar backlog for maintenance. In 10 years, the city will need $10 billion to repair social housing, streets, and parks. Councillor Mike Layton proposed bringing back the $60 vehicle registration fee scrapped under former Mayor Rob Ford.
And I don't think it's too much to ask for. Instead of putting $50 more on transit riders this year to go on public transit, that we re-examine the use of the vehicle registration fee to go to transportation in general, to get people out of their cars and onto public transit.
The suggestion, though, didn't fly with council. The brutal winter meant there was a lot of talk about snow removal.
For some reason, even though it's the city's criteria, streets that meet that criteria are not being cleared. That is of concern to me.
Council voted to review this winter's maintenance. There were only 2 votes against the $13.4 billion budget. It is balanced, however, based on the assumption that Ottawa will cover the $45 million spent on resettling refugees in the city. The federal government hasn't said when that money is coming. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
To Queen's Park now, where hundreds of parents, therapists, and teachers showing up to protest changes to the province's autism therapy program. Advocates have been making their voices heard at the legislature daily, ever since the changes were announced a few weeks ago. Farah Morali has more.
In the sea of protesters on the lawns of Queen's Park today, we met Nev and Will Dundas, holding a photograph of their son Dylan, who's about to turn 6. He's on the autism spectrum, being treated with IBI, intensive behavioral therapy.
Our son is on the spectrum, and we want to be here to support all the other parents.
How will the changes affect your child?
Our son is in full-time IBI right now, so the change means that he's no longer going to be going at his current school. He will have to be integrated into the TDSB school system. And he spoke with the principal, and there's absolutely no support for him when he starts come middle of April.
How much does treatment cost for your son?
It's roughly $93,000, $94,000.
That's a year.
We are actually considering selling our house so that we can have some money to extend his current therapy to get him to transition to the school a little bit better. And, you know, from that point on, who knows if we can afford a couple of days a week. A couple of days a week is what he's going to get.
As a teacher and as a mother, I say this to you, Doug Ford. You will be held accountable.
The Dundases weren't alone in their cries against the government's changes today. Protesters came by the busloads. Parents children, teachers.
Well, emotions ran high outside at this rally. Inside Queen's Park, tempers flared as the government defended its move to make these changes to the autism program.
3 out of 4 children in the province of Ontario have been denied service by their Ontario government, and we are changing that.
During question period, Minister Lisa MacLeod showed no signs of backing down while being heckled by protesters.
Go outside and look at us and my daughter that you're abandoning.
As you heard there, the Minister of Social Services, Lisa MacLeod, was not at today's rally, and that's because she said yesterday she'd received threats against her personal safety. This evening, we confirmed with Ottawa Police that they've arrested and charged one person with uttering threats and criminal harassment. There are no details as to what happened. Meanwhile, the changes to the autism program funding come into effect on April 1st. Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
Firefighters were called to a 3-alarm fire at a home under construction in Lawrence Park tonight. The flames started in the basement of the unoccupied home at Rochester Avenue. It's near Lawrence and Bayview. It started around 7 o'clock. Toronto Fire says the first floor of the house has been compromised. No injuries, though, have been reported. And we are learning some exclusive details about some of the 25,000 complaints submitted to the province's so-called teacher snitch line. You may recall it was set up by the Ford government after the province reverted to the old sex ed curriculum. It allowed parents to report teachers who didn't follow suit. 27 of those complaints were escalated. Chris Glover has details on the emails that were deemed worthy of further investigation in this CBC Toronto exclusive.
Now they shouldn't send sexts. This is disgusting.
Queer parent Becky McFarland reads complaints from the government's so-called teacher snitch line.
She intends to teach children about same-sex marriage. I do not want my child learning about this vile act.
CBC Toronto obtained the complaints from a Freedom of Information request. In 25,000 complaints, ministry staff deemed 27 as potential teacher misconduct for the College of Teachers to investigate. Some of the 27 alleged racism or sex assault, but others flagged as potential misconduct involved classroom conversations about same-sex marriage.
And I can't imagine who was on the receiving end of that comment thinking it was appropriate to pass that on to the Ontario College of Teachers.
The snitch line riled up protests last year. Since parents can already lodge complaints directly with the college, the fear was the snitch line would be used to scare teachers to ignore topics such as gay families. Now that it's been shown to lump complaints of sex assaults with conversations of same-sex couples, a University of Toronto education professor says the snitch line has crossed the line.
You can't compare somebody having sexual relationships with a student and then compare that same complaint with a teacher who's teaching about LGBTQ issues. Teachers have the professional responsibility to provide factual information.
McFarland recently lost a lawsuit against the Doug Ford government's decision to scrap the Liberals' 2015 revisions to sex ed. Government lawyers argued teachers are still able to discuss the removed subjects, but McFarland says the information CBC dug up about the snitch line proves that's not true.
We are hated in so many ways, and that there is actually a mechanism that is being created by our provincial government that is allowing people to espouse that in a formalized way.
McFarland says she'll continue to teach her 11-year-old their family isn't wrong, whether teachers can back up the lesson or not. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Colette Kennedy's here with a first look at the forecast. Please tell me we're going to see a warm-up at some point.
Yes, we finally got there, Mike. We've got a cold night to get through tonight, but we've earned it. The temperatures are finally coming back at least closer to seasonal values for a few days, and then a real spike I'm going to show you a little later in the show. What I want to show you right now, though, is that we do have high pressure in place, so a clearing trend through the overnight hours It sets us up. There'll be a few clouds at times, a little bit variable, especially towards midday, but mostly we're going to have sunshine through the day on Friday. And not only that, and now it does in the overnight hours allow for some cold overnights with those clearer skies, but not only Friday into Saturday too. Most of the day looking good. I say most of the day because you can't ignore this. So this is Saturday evening. The clouds start to roll in. For those of you watching from southwestern Ontario into the afternoon hours in the evening, we start to see the rain showers pushing in as well. And then this system is going to come in overnight for the GTA Saturday into Sunday and have an impact into that second half of the weekend. I'll break it down in terms of what we're going to see in precipitation and the spike in temperature a little later, but let me just leave you first of all with what happens overnight tonight, -14, still feeling like -20, and tomorrow afternoon, sunshine. And there we go. Okay, still not seasonal, but much better in terms of an afternoon high of -1, Mike.
It's at least going in the right direction.
Absolutely it is.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
Well, Premier Doug Ford has finally responded to the Ron Taverner controversy. For the first time this week, he attended question period, and the opposition was quick to take aim. Lisa Shing now with the squabbling that followed soon after.
The unparliamentary behavior started even before the questions did.
I would be remiss if I didn't, and I'm sure members of the gallery and the chamber would join in with me to welcome the Premier back to the chamber here today. We missed him.
Doug Ford has been gone all week. In fact, a quick tally shows he's missed 11 out of the last 18 question periods. So today, the NDP was quick to capitalize on his attendance.
Will the Premier stop hiding and call a public inquiry today? Does the Premier still want to argue that Brad Blair was wrong?
Late yesterday, Toronto Police Superintendent Ron Taverner withdrew his name for the role of OPP Commissioner, saying it was causing too much controversy. This week, OPP Deputy Commissioner Brad Blair was fired. He's been challenging the hiring of Taverner because Taverner is a friend of Doug Ford. Today, Blair's lawyer said he wants full accountability and compensation for the actions that led to his firing. All week, the NDP echoed Blair's allegations of political misconduct. Today, Ford hit back.
I found it disgusting, Mr. Speaker, how he was berated. He was attacked by the opposition. I want to thank the leader of the police-hating party for the question. I've never seen a more anti-police caucus than the one sitting across from us today. The NDP,
Premier, take your seat.
In fact, MPPs were chastised a few times.
The tone of this debate is deteriorating. It impresses no one.
Outside the chamber, the Minister of Community Safety admitted no wrongdoing in this months-long saga.
The NDP chose to sully an individual's reputation.
All we've done is said he has a bad choice of friends.
So now the search for a new OPP commissioner starts. The government says there is no timeline. The Integrity Commissioner is still investigating Taverner's appointment. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario realtors and home builders are calling on the province to change zoning rules around transit stations to potentially create space for thousands of new homes every year. Could it help solve the current housing supply crunch? We will take a look after the break. The family of billionaires Honey and Barry Sherman want to demolish the home where the two were murdered. The Apotex founder and his wife were found dead in their basement in December of 2017. They had belts looped around their necks and were found beside an indoor pool. In an application to the North York Community Council, an agent representing the family says the house has bad memories and a stigma because of the incident. They want to level the house, clean up the site, and sell it. They say no one will buy the home as it stands, according to the letter. Well, just as the province is considering taking over Toronto's subway system, a new study suggests that better use of the space around and above transit hubs could result in thousands of new homes being built each year. Greg Ross looked into this untapped real estate opportunity to see if it stacked up.
There are a lot of areas around here that are completely empty.
No, if you pan around here, you just see an enormous amount of potential.
This is Kipling Station on the Bloor Street subway line. It was also listed in a new study by Ryerson University as one of the many underdeveloped transit hubs across the province.
Yeah, there are hundreds of meters of land all around us here that should be developed. What this speaks to is in previous generations, the priority was all about the car. If you look at the subway station, it's a perfect symbol of the issue. You have this tiny little subway station, which is dwarfed by the major roadway running overhead.
It's clear that Ontario's pre-disco 1970s zoning bylaws don't reflect modern consumer demand or modern times.
Today, the Ontario Real Estate Association, led by former Conservative MPP Tim Hudak, called on the province to force municipalities to change bylaws to enable more growth around transportation hubs. The Ryerson study suggests there's more than 1,500 square kilometers of land ripe for development. David Amborski is one of the authors.
Also, a number of the transit zones in the Toronto area are in what's called the Yellow Belt, which are what are called stable single-family neighborhoods, and they're protected under the official plan for the city.
This urban planner agrees change is needed and says some of the issues can be solved by more mid-range buildings, 6 stories or less.
But what's really lacking is what's called the missing middle, where you can achieve a lot of densities.
The study suggests if all of these transportation hubs were to reach their full potential, 4 million new homes could be created. But realistically, 20,000 new homes per year could meet the current demand across the province. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
I'm Lorenda Redekop. This looks just like a shed, but it could actually be part of the solution to solving the homelessness issue. I'll show you more of what's inside coming up.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
We have a story now of a Toronto man who is struggling to find housing in our city. He didn't want to live in a shelter, so he built his own. Lorenda Redekop has his look at his home on wheels.
Welcome to Chateau Dan. Open up and you can see inside. It's fairly rudimentary, but it's well insulated.
This is where his friend Dan now sleeps, all his own idea.
Dan's always been a pretty sharp and inventive guy. And all of a sudden he announced that I'm going to build myself a house.
There's a fold-down bed, lights, heating, and a catchy name.
The Cramper, because it's kind of like a camper and the space is a little cramped.
Dan himself didn't want to be identified, but did agree to an interview. He created this to solve his own housing problem, well aware of the dangers of sleeping on the streets.
I just didn't want to become a statistic, but I also didn't want to become someone in a shelter or a respite center. I can close the door at night, I can lock it. It is relatively safe in here.
It's mobile, built on old bicycle wheels. He wheels it around and stays on friends' properties. The metal base is part of an old ladder.
All right, so it is called the Cramper for a reason, but I can almost stand up in there with this peaked roof.
There aren't any windows, though.
Do you think this could be considered illegal, actually?
Probably in somebody's eyes. Somebody's going to find a reason that no, it won't work.
It's just one example of unusual shelter ideas to get people off the streets. In Oregon, they've created fast-build mini homes that resemble covered wagons. In the Yukon, it's tiny homes for the homeless. In Vaughan, they're turning old buses into shelters. Housing advocates say Dan's invention is creative, but not the answer to end homelessness.
Or it's the best solution for a really terrible situation. And I think that Torontonians, while they may be excited by this, probably know in their heart of hearts that this is nowhere near good enough and that we really, really need to have people housed.
Dan is now thinking about a new and improved version. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Colette is back with her extended forecast. Finally, we are seeing a warm-up over the weekend.
Yes, we certainly are. So we've got a couple of days where temperatures are closer to seasonal, not quite, and then we're going to get a spike into the early part of the day, at least Sunday. Just a reminder of those numbers. Now our average high is actually over 2 degrees in terms of what would be seasonal, and minus 6.7 still for the average low. So that's what we've just been running, really on the cold side with this Arctic air that's been in place. And so it'll be nice to kind of say good riddance to that. Going to see a system move in that's going to help to push those temperatures up. It's going to change our wind flow and also bring in some precipitation that's going to turn over to mostly rain showers. But let me walk you through the next little while. That high pressure giving us a clearing trend tonight. It does mean some sunshine for us through the GTA tomorrow. Southwestern Ontario early in the day, you'll have some cloud cover, and then things are looking better because this system stays to the south. But we have some Pacific moisture that's going to be moving into Colorado, another Colorado low then developing. And as we watch what happens, so we're protected still by that high pressure as we go into Saturday. So beginning the day off with some sunshine, but then as the day wears on, that breaks down as that ridge moves off. This area moves in, brings in first the clouds, then we'll see into the later afternoon and evening hour showers for southwestern Ontario by Saturday evening and overnight. A bit of a mix coming through the GTA. Closer to the lakeshore, it'll probably just be rain showers the whole time, but some freezing rain possible, a few centimeters at least of some wet snow, and then the temperature will continue to rise with some pretty breezy conditions, and then we'll see just a rain event after that Sunday morning, and then it moves out. We might even get into some breaks into Sunday afternoon, but then the cold front goes through, the winds will change direction again, and then temperatures are going to moderate a little bit. In terms of what we'll see with the rainfall portion, not the snow, could be over 25 millimeters for Windsor area and looking at more like closer to that 15 to 17 for the Toronto area. Tonight, minus 11 into southwestern Ontario, feeling like minus 17. 1 tomorrow for the high for you in Windsor with that sun, especially in the afternoon. Minus 14, feeling minus 20 overnight tonight, and minus 1 to 0 for us around the Golden Horseshoe with a little bit of cloud at times, but mostly it's sunshine that we have on Friday. There you go with that system moving through on Sunday, and that that spike of 7 degrees early in the day, then the temperature will be falling later in the day. And that reminder, once again, about setting your clocks forward on Saturday night. The storm comes in, think to yourself, oh yeah, the clocks go forward as well. So one less hour of it, maybe.
One less hour of a
doesn't quite
storm
work
to
that
deal
way,
with, I
but
guess.
yeah.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Well, coming up, she's already got several Olympic gold medals, and now Tessa Virtue can add something else to her collection. We'll tell you more after the break. Barbie has had a lot of careers since Mattel launched the doll 60 years ago this month. Well, now she's become a champion figure skater, and a Canadian one at that. Tessa Virtue is a model for one of the new Barbies. Virtue, of course, and her partner Scott Moore are the most decorated Olympic figure skaters ever. You'll recognize the dress from that gold-winning free dance at the 2018 Pyeongchang Games. The doll is part of the new role model collection that is coming out for International Women's Day tomorrow. Mattel says it hopes to honor women who are breaking boundaries to inspire the next generation of girls. Well, before we go for International Women's Day, on cue tomorrow, another woman with her own doll, technically. Yeardley Smith provides the voice of Lisa Simpson. She's going to be talking to Tom Power, of course, about that famous role, plus her own true crime podcast she produces, as well as her production company that aims at promoting female roles typically underrepresented on screen. You can hear that interview with the voice of Lisa Simpson tomorrow at 10 a.m. on Q on CBC Radio 1. I'm on assignment tomorrow working on a 3D story. Talia Ricci will be here for me instead. Good night.